appropriate fertilizer available if it's not affordable to our farmers, because we will not achieve the intended objective to increase productivity as well as, if you like, to secure for the most vulnerable food for their family members. There's been a touch already made on the appropriateness of fertilizer. In the past, most of our countries, although we are pushing to increase the quantum of fertilizer we apply, 50 kgs, as it were, it is true that we've been applying fertilizer, lesser quantities, yes, but also inappropriate fertilizer, because we've not done enough soil testing, we've not done enough research and therefore development on the varieties that need to be treated differently. So I do believe that this outcome, President Ruto, the outcome of this conference, will address those issues as well. If fertilizer is not affordable, it means when we produce the food will be expensive. That's a package we need to take account of as a team, working together. We shouldn't depend on others to supply us with fertilizer from outside the continent. Therefore, we need to invest, I agree with President Ruto, on our continent to increase the capacity to produce fertilizer. Yes, using our raw materials as much as possible, those that are available. And the continent has these raw materials, which must be exploited effectively. But we need to invest in order to exploit these resources. And we've been singing this song that when we invest, we must ensure that we mobilize capital which is fairly priced. Otherwise, there will be a cost push on the fertilizer that we produce. So the issue of fair, correct price of capital remains valid in these conversations. And I would like to repeat what we've been saying before. We mobilize capital, we mobilize technology, which is also critical, capital at the right price, technology, appropriate technology, not a second fiddle. We want to leapfrog as a continent to the best technology available. Very important. We also, as we talk about investment in fertilizer, we must talk about trading with each other. There's no point that we work together to increase capacity to produce fertilizer, but a number of us on the continent are still placing orders to purchase fertilizer from other parts of the world. It means we're failing to support the investments that we've made for them to be viable. And if they're not viable, we know the consequences. So I think it's important that the technical colleagues that have been deliberating on this matter, we, the heads of state, include in our minimum requirements buying from each other. In Zambia, we've started practicing that on fertilizer and other aspects. 2 years since we took office, 2.5 years now, we've been able to move from almost a zero situation or minimum situation of producing fertilizer, especially the vessel dressing, to self-sufficiency, and we'll be moving towards self-sufficiency on the top dressing. But we have also deliberately said that we shall practice what we're calling positive discrimination, buy from ourselves. So that should apply for us. What we don't produce, buy from Zimbabwe, buy from Kenya, buy from someone else on the continent. But I think this is something that we must make as a minimum amongst others, that we buy from ourselves. Then we can commercially support the decisions that we're making out of such conferences. Abuja declarations a long time ago. Why haven't we made progress? We need to introspect and begin to address those issues that have not allowed us to make progress as we would have loved to. Let me also indicate something here, which I know has been touched by colleagues already, even before we arrived, we who came only last night. and to be here for this morning's conversation. I think while we want to apply appropriate fertilizers, quantities, take account of soil types, yes, but productivity carries a very important value here. We shouldn't be going for putting on farming or bringing into farming activities all the hectareage that is available and can be farmed. We can avoid that, because if we go that way, we damage the environment further. It will instigate more floods, more droughts. We know that on that side. I think we should drive productivity to levels where the hectares under cultivation doesn't necessarily have to expand by bringing down more trees, but by utilizing with a higher productivity the hectares that we already have under cultivation. I think that's very important, so that we manage the two evils, food insecurity, but also reducing climate damage, so to say. I think then we'll be more and more complete as a continent. I must also say, again, with the drive on climate change, droughts, we need to invest in agriculture driven by irrigation as much as possible. So I'm just touching on things that I think we should be alive to as we come to maybe reaching conclusions whenever we do that. Precision irrigation is very important. If I may say, going forward, we who run public affairs, together with the private sector, who bring to the table the challenges, the farmers that produce, who bring the challenges that they face imposed by the legal and regulatory framework and policy framework, we have to address those issues so that investments in fertilizer production, investment in actual primary agriculture, investments in processing, agro-processing, value addition, storage, transportation, logistics, roads, railways, are all brought under control, but the environment in our countries must improve. The operating environment must improve. Legislation, legal impediments must also be isolated clearly within national boundaries and beyond national boundaries. I would like to make that argument in this summit as well. I think it would be helpful that we took into account those issues. I guess my colleagues have also mentioned the importance of soil mapping, digitization. President Mnangagwa has touched on that. Is extremely imperative. Maybe we should set targets as to when we should conclude this baseline work, such as soil mapping, Prime Minister, and digitization, so we can improve knowledge of what soils we have in our countries, across our countries, on the continent, and being able to talk to each other, sharing best practices. I think this is important in my view. And then we'll be able to manage our soils better, sustainably, without damaging them, but we'll also be able to use fertilizer in the correct way. I do believe that this we can do under 3 years. We should set ambitious targets in order to address the laxities out of the Abuja Declaration. We should set tight timelines, targets, realistic, yes, but they must be ambitious, because Africa cannot wait. The young population needs food, vulnerable families need food, young population need jobs. They need jobs not just in primary production, but also in secondary industries arising from agriculture, produce as food, raw material, but also industrial raw materials. I think it's very important that African Union Chair, we consider these tight timelines so we can be, if you like, remedial to the challenges that we face following the Abuja Declaration. If I may also say, we in Zambia are committed to the declarations that we make here. And I believe all of us should be committed. And maybe what is important is to work out a matrix of implementation measures that we can share as a common checklist, all of us. Of course, country-specific, but also Africa specific in a way, broader than our own national boundaries. I think that's what will bring us together even more on the different aspects. Thank you for your attention. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those remarks. Next, I would like to invite His Excellency Faustin Archange Ouattara, President of the Central African Republic, to make his remarks. Welcome, sir. We can encourage him with a clap as he comes up. Karibu sana, as we say it in Kenya. Karibu.
Excellences, Dr William Samuel Ruto, Président de la République du Kenya, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement,
and government present here, Mr. Moussa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of my country, the Central African Republic, I would like to express satisfaction with the excellent quality of this commission on African soils and fertilizers, as well as the legendary hospitality of the people of Kenya. The organization of this important summit, in spite of the extreme meteorological conditions which have led to floods and led to the loss of several lives, as well as a lot of material damage in Kenya. In spite of the resilience of the Kenyan people and the strong will of the government of this country in the quest for sustainable solution to the common problems of humanity. Let me reiterate to our brother, President Ruto, and the brotherly people of Kenya, my feelings of compassion as well as the solidarity of the people of the Central African Republic. These extreme meteorological conditions, which are only getting worse in the past few years, apart from loss in human life, have indeed deteriorated the quality of our arable land and agricultural production, and has led to food crisis in our respective countries. That is why the Central African Republic is happy with the African Union initiative and that of the Republic of Kenya to organize this summit, which gives us an opportunity to together consider the health of Africa's soil, to adapt strategies which have been used up till now to increase soil productivity for greater and sustainable production in terms of agricultural growth and economic production and the welfare health of our populations. This summit, which comes at a time where there's critical conditions of meteorology, gives us an opportunity to bring our resources together in the fight of these climatic conditions and to conjugate our efforts to attain our objectives in terms of environmental and food security sustainability. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it has been proven that in spite of its vast economic and agricultural potential and the fact that agriculture is a sector that gives employment to the vast majority of people, Africa still remains a major importer of food products. The volume of its exports is in deficit in spite of the commitment made since the Abuja summit in 2006. 17 years afterwards, the use of fertilizers still remains low at the continental level, and the challenges faced by our countries to guarantee food security call for collective mobilization of all stakeholders that we are, just like other African countries, Agriculture occupies the pride of place in Africa's economy. It contributes to the tune of 50% of the GDP, and nearly 70% of the active population is involved in agricultural production. However, in spite of its importance, agriculture only occupies 1% of our territory, and perhaps 1/4 of the area which is used for agriculture. The production of fertilizers and the quality of soils, as well as international tension, constitute a problem for Africa's production, in spite of the abundance of arable land. But quite often, the soil remains fragile. This soil, which covers a major part of our countries, is indeed the weak link of agriculture in Central Africa if it is not properly managed and sustainably managed through conservation. The combination of several traditional practices have contributed to the weakening of the soil in Central Africa. The phenomenon of using wood for cooking and overgrazing of our land are issues which should be watched closely to ensure that the future populations should not move in search of fertile land. There's also the vast savanna lands in Africa, which remain virgin land of good quality, which should be closely followed in order that they should be preserved. There is a major volume of agricultural production which is required for the lives of our regional and national populations, but this notion must be replaced by the sustainability of our plant production. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the use of fertilizers in the agriculture sector in Central Africa is indeed comprised of chemical and organic fertilizers. Chemical fertilizers are very expensive, and they are used for the production of cotton, cocoa, coffee, and today corn. The rate of national consumption is 100 kilograms per hectare for the chemical fertilizer and 50 per hectare for the organic fertilizers. For cotton, it's the leading agricultural product, and the chemical fertilizer has always contributed to the production of these products. For the following products, for instance, organic fertilizer, which are produced at the family level, are at the head, and they are used for the restoration of degradable land, and this should be encouraged. This fertilizer, which is complementary to chemical fertilizer, have a low impact on human life, and it is used in Central Africa as a way of promoting local production in livestock and agriculture, the sustainability of soils and their restoration. It emerges from this that the lack of the difficult access to fertilizers for these farmers indeed affects agricultural production, and this reduces the expectations of our people. To deal with this constraint, measures to promote the availability of fertilizers is important, even if it remains insufficient. So my country is amongst the pioneers in the quest for complementary solutions based on regenerative agriculture and agroforestry. These innovative practices, the use of fertilizers, enrich soils for a better agricultural performance. Also, there's reforestation And this makes it possible for our farmers to be able to protect our environment. That is why we would like to call on our partners to stand by us in the use of this practice, which is indeed an efficient agricultural system which is adapted to our realities and in the fight against climate change. This reflection will also revolve on agroecology and the intelligence of agricultural conservation. In this context, agriculture therefore becomes the user because it encourages the ecologists to use fertilizers to get involved in a coherent and productive agricultural system. So I wish all of us success in our deliberations, and I thank you all.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to now call upon His Excellency Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi. Welcome, Your Excellency. Let's encourage him and give him a clap as he's approaching the podium. Welcome, sir.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, Chair of the African Commission, as well as Chair of the African Union, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to represent Malawi and her interest in matters to do with fertilizer and soil health at this important summit. With 9 million Malawians facing food insecurity this year as a result of poor rains occasioned by the El Niño weather, we consider any discussion regarding anything that affects food production to be a matter of national security. And so our presence here is not for the sake of participation, but a matter of socioeconomic survival. As a nation, we are very keen to partner with others on the continent and beyond in addressing one of the root causes of low productivity in agriculture: hunger and food insecurity. In fact, by being here, we are tackling one of the chief pillars of the high inflation that drives and deepens poverty in Africa. For much of the inflation we see in our economies is fueled by food inflation. And relevant to this discussion is the urgency of investing in the health of our soils to improve productivity. Malawi has not been spared from the crisis of degraded soils, and we are seeing the consequences of the same through the diminishing harvests that we are obtaining year in and year out. My government has therefore taken special interest in addressing soil health issues, and we will soon be piloting a program to address the high acidity levels in the soils of certain parts in Malawi, with the aim of quickly scaling up the same to other parts. But this is not the first intervention Malawi has effected since Abuja 2006. Previous interventions have included the improvement of smallholder farmers' access to inorganic fertilizer, which has been largely achieved through the Affordable Input Program, AIP, I introduced when I took office 4 years ago. However, we have noted that even though our efforts to improve access and use of inorganic fertilizers have led to an increase in our national food production output, the benefits have not been enjoyed by everyone at domestic level as desired. In fact, studies show that in the parts of Malawi where the gains have not been registered, the effectiveness of inorganic fertilizer plummeted by approximately 70% between 2014 and 2022 due to soil degradation, which is worsened by climate change impacts like cyclones and droughts. We have therefore realized that adding nutrients through the use of chemical fertilizers is not adequate for increasing crop productivity and reducing hunger and food insecurity. For the missing link is the urgent need to address soil health issues. This is the reason why my government has proactively developed a 10-year plan, Malawi Action Plan on fertilizer and soil health, to domesticate the continental framework which we're adopting at this summit. Our goal is to improve soil health, improve the usage of organic and inorganic fertilizers, improve soil productivity, and reduce soil degradation and soil erosion. In so doing, we will reverse the negative trend in the deterioration of our soil health through a set of interventions that have been outlined in the action plan. Through our action plan, costing approximately $163 million, we will leverage existing programs by government and other stakeholders with our development